You will have both of us tonight. 6 words that made Zara Molef's entire world stop spinning. The Kim twins stood before her in the dimly lit penthouse. 2 identical faces wearing expressions that made her 19-year-old heart race so fast she thought it might explode. Jae-hyun's dark eyes held absolute certainty, the kind that comes from men who've never been denied anything they wanted. Jae-sung's gaze was softer but somehow more devastating, like a caress wrapped around inevitability. She'd been married to both of them for 99 days, and tonight, everything was about to change. This is the story of Zara, a South African teenager who became the wife of Korea's most dangerous twin heirs. What you're about to hear isn't your typical romance. It's about desperation that becomes desire, fear that transforms into fascination, and the moment when you realize the cage you're trapped in might be the only place you've ever truly belonged. But here's the thing about deals made in darkness that nobody tells you. Sometimes the people who own you on paper are the only ones who actually see your soul. And sometimes that recognition is the most dangerous seduction of all. Before we dive any deeper into Zara's unraveling fate, a quick welcome to Shadow Soul Stories Besties, the home of dangerous love, ruthless heirs, and the kind of tension that keeps you awake long after the episode ends. If you're new here, this is where we explore worlds built on secrets, obsession, and the thin line between captivity and connection. Every story on this channel is crafted to pull you in, hold you tight, and refuse to let you go. So do me one favor, hit subscribe and become part of the Shadow Clan. Your support helps this new channel grow, brings more chapters to life, and keeps these dark tales coming. Now let's get right back into the story. For months before those 6 words changed everything, Zara's world was collapsing in slow motion. She was a literature student at Cape Town University, working brutal night shifts at a cafe to keep her family afloat. Her parents had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, leaving her to raise her grandmother who needed heart surgery, and 2 younger siblings whose brilliant futures were dimming with each unpaid bill. The debt was suffocating them, medical costs climbing into numbers that made her physically sick. She was 3 weeks from losing everything when the envelope arrived at her apartment door. Heavy cream paper with a red wax seal, her name written in calligraphy so perfect it looked like art. Inside was a proposal that felt like something from a fever dream. The Kim family, one of the most powerful Korean crime syndicates operating between Seoul and Cape Town, wanted a wife for their twin heirs. Not one wife for each man, but one woman for both of them. The offer was staggering in its audacity and its generosity. 3 million rand up front, complete medical care for her grandmother, full educational expenses for her siblings, a home they could never lose, financial security for life. In exchange, Zara would marry Jae-hyun and Jae-sung Kim, live with them, and belong to them completely. The contract arrived the next day, 42 pages of legal language that essentially said she was signing away her freedom in exchange for her family's survival. Page 17 detailed her living arrangements in their penthouse. Page 24 outlined expectations and obligations that made her face burn. Page 31 made it explicitly clear she couldn't leave without their permission. And page 33 contained a clause that made her hands shake so badly she nearly dropped the document. She would remain untouched, completely innocent, for 100 days after the wedding. 100 days to adjust to her new life, to understand what she'd agreed to prepare herself for the night when they would claim what the contract said belonged to them. Zara read that contract until the words blurred together. She looked at her grandmother, dying slowly because they couldn't afford the surgery that would save her life. She looked at her 15-year-old twin siblings, their potential suffocating under the weight of poverty neither had chosen. She thought about dignity, about freedom, about all the choices she'd thought she'd have in life. Then she picked up the pen and signed her name in ink that felt like it should have been her blood. The decision took 3 seconds. Living with it would take the rest of her life. The wedding happened 2 weeks later in a private villa in Camps Bay, hidden behind walls high enough to keep out the world and security sophisticated enough to repel a small army. There were no family members present, no friends to witness what she was doing. Just lawyers, witnesses paid handsomely to forget what they'd seen, and an officiant who spoke in English and Korean without meeting anyone's eyes. Zara wore white because someone had decided she should, a dress that hugged her young body like it had been designed specifically for her measurements. Because it had been. They'd known her size, her proportions, the exact shade of her brown skin before she'd ever agreed to any of this. That should have been her first real warning. But by then she was already drowning, and this was the only lifeline anyone had thrown. When the Kim twins entered the room, Zara understood with crystal clarity why people whispered their names with equal parts terror and fascination. Jaehyun walked in first, and the very air seemed to change, becoming heavier, more charged, dangerous. He was 26 years old and looked like danger wrapped in expensive tailoring. Sharp jawline that could have been carved from marble, dark eyes that saw through every defense, black hair styled with the kind of precision that suggested control in absolutely everything. A tattoo curved along the side of his neck, Korean characters she couldn't read disappearing beneath his collar like a secret. His black suit probably cost more than her family had earned in the last year. He looked at her the way someone might assess a rare painting they'd just purchased, with appreciation and possession in equal measure. Then Jae-sung entered, and Zara realized that identical faces could house completely different energies. Same devastating features, same tall frame, same lethal grace in how he moved. But where Jaehyun radiated cold calculation and absolute control, Jae-sung burned with something warmer and somehow infinitely more dangerous. His eyes held heat when they traveled over her, a slow perusal that made her skin feel too tight. When he smiled, it wasn't comforting. It was a promise of things she didn't yet understand but could feel in her bones. He looked at her like he already knew every secret she'd ever kept, like he could see straight through to all the hidden parts of herself she'd never shown anyone. The ceremony lasted exactly 14 minutes. The officiant spoke words about binding and belonging that sounded more like an incantation than a traditional wedding service. 3 signatures on one legal document. Jaehyun signed first, his handwriting sharp and precise as a blade. Jae-sung signed second, his script more flowing but equally confident. Then Zara signed her own name and felt the trap close around her with teeth made of velvet and steel. She was married. To both of them. Legally bound in ways that shouldn't be possible, but were when you had enough money and power to rewrite rules. Jae-hyun spoke first, his voice deep and accented and absolutely certain of every word. Welcome to your new life, Zara. Everything has changed now. You belong to us, not in some romantic metaphorical way, but actually, completely, irrevocably. His hand lifted to her face, fingers tracing along her jawline with a touch that was somehow both gentle and possessive. Do you understand what that means? Her voice came out steadier than she felt, which was something. I understand the contract I signed. Jae-sung moved behind her then, and suddenly she was caught between them, their combined presence overwhelming every sense she had. The contract is just paper, beautiful girl, he murmured, his breath warm against her neck. What exists between the 3 of us, what we're going to build together, that's something else entirely. You have 100 days, Jaehyun continued, his hand still on her face, thumb brushing her cheek with maddening softness. 100 days to understand what you've become to us, what we're going to become to you. And then, Zara whispered, even though she already knew the answer, had read it a dozen times in that contract. Then we claim what's ours, they said in perfect unison, and the synchronicity of it sent something electric and terrifying straight through her entire body. Then you become ours in every way that matters. The penthouse became her new world, beautiful and isolating in equal measure. It occupied the entire top floor of one of Cape Town's most exclusive buildings, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of Table Mountain that looked like something from a dream. Everything was expensive, everything was beautiful, everything reminded her constantly that she'd been purchased. The living spaces were decorated in blacks and grays and deep blues, masculine and sophisticated. Her bedroom was different, softer, decorated in creams and golds like they'd tried to create a space that felt like hers even though everything here belonged to them. They gave her space at first, room to breathe and adjust and process what her life had become. Her bedroom had a lock, though she never used it because what would be the point? Her bathroom was massive, all marble and gold fixtures, with a shower large enough for multiple people that felt like foreshadowing she tried not to think about. They respected her privacy when she needed it, which was constantly in those early days because being near them felt like standing too close to a fire. But privacy was an illusion in their world. She could feel their attention on her constantly, like a physical weight, watching and assessing and waiting for something. Jaehyun worked from home most days, running a criminal empire from behind a sleek laptop with the same casual efficiency most people use to check their email. She'd catch him watching her over breakfast, his gaze traveling over her face and body with such thorough intensity that she felt exposed even when fully clothed. He never said much in those moments, just observed with those calculating dark eyes, like he was solving a puzzle only he could see. The attention should have felt invasive, should have made her uncomfortable. Instead, it made her hyper-aware of her own body in ways she'd never been before, conscious of how she moved, how she looked, what he might be thinking. Jae-sung was more direct, and somehow that made everything worse. He'd find reasons to be near her, to touch her in ways that seemed casual but never felt accidental. A hand on her lower back when they passed in the hallway, the touch lingering just slightly too long. Fingers brushing against hers when he handed her a glass of wine at dinner. Sitting close on the couch during movies they watched together, his thigh pressed against hers, his arm draped along the back of the sofa behind her shoulders in a posture that looked relaxed but felt like a cage made of warmth. And he'd say things, quiet observations that landed like seduction even when they shouldn't. "You're beautiful when you're nervous, Zara. I wonder what you're thinking about when you look at us like that." 87 days left. I'm counting every single one. Each comment made her pulse race, made heat pool low in her stomach, made her think about things a 19-year-old virgin probably shouldn't be imagining. But she couldn't help it. They were magnetic, both of them, in different ways that somehow complemented each other perfectly. And she was trapped in close quarters with them, watching them move through their days with lethal grace, seeing glimpses of who they were beneath the dangerous exteriors they showed the world. The tension built like a gathering storm, pressure increasing with each passing day. Zara found herself thinking about them constantly, even when she tried not to. She'd lie alone in her bed at night, knowing they were just down the hall in their own rooms, and her imagination would spiral into territory that made her face burn. What would it feel like when they finally touched her the way the contract said they could? Would they be gentle or demanding? Would it hurt? Would she like it? The questions circled in her mind endlessly, and there was no one she could ask, no one who would understand the bizarre situation she'd gotten herself into. Her body started responding to them in ways that confused and frightened her. Her skin would feel hypersensitive whenever they came near. Her heart would race at the sound of their voices. Heat would bloom through her at the simplest touches, the most innocent contact. She'd never been attracted to anyone like this before, had never felt desire that was almost painful in its intensity. And there were two of them, which made everything more complicated and more intense. She'd look at Jaehyun and feel drawn to his controlled intensity, then look at Jae-sung and feel pulled toward his warm danger, and her mind would short-circuit trying to process wanting them both. Day 37 arrived with a shift in the atmosphere that Zara felt the moment she woke up. There was a box on her dresser that hadn't been there when she went to sleep, wrapped in black paper with a silver ribbon. Her hands shook as she opened it to find the most beautiful and revealing dress she'd ever seen. Emerald green silk that would cling to every curve and fall to mid-thigh. A note in Jaehyun's precise handwriting simply said, "Wear this tonight. We're taking you somewhere. Be ready at 8. No explanation, no details, just an instruction that was clearly not a request. She spent the entire day anxious and anticipating, unable to focus on the online classes she was taking or the book she tried to read. This felt different somehow, like a turning point she couldn't quite name. At 7:30, she started getting ready, taking longer in the shower than necessary, trying to calm her racing heart. The dress fit like it had been made for her body specifically, because it probably had been. It made her look older, sophisticated, dangerous in her own right. She barely recognized the girl staring back from the mirror. This version of herself who looked like she belonged in their world. At exactly 8 o'clock, she emerged from her room to find both twins waiting in the living area, and the way they looked at her made her knees actually weak. They wore dark shirts and tailored pants, simple clothes that somehow made them look more dangerous rather than less. Jae-hyun's eyes traveled down her body, so slowly she felt it like a physical touch, heat in his gaze that he didn't try to hide. "Perfect," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "You're absolutely perfect." Jae-sung crossed to her, extending his hand with that devastating smile. "Come here, beautiful girl. Let us look at you properly." She walked to them on legs that trembled slightly, and the moment her hand touched Jae-sung's, she felt electricity arc between them. He pulled her closer, not quite into his arms, but near enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Do you have any idea how stunning you are?" he asked softly, his free hand lifting to brush a strand of hair behind her ear. "How much restraint it takes not to touch you the way we want to." Jae-hyun moved behind her, and she was trapped between them again, their favorite configuration, the position that made her feel simultaneously protected and possessed. 63 days left, he murmured near her ear. 63 more days of this beautiful torture. Then everything changes. They led her to the private elevator, the one she'd learned required both their fingerprints to operate. It descended past the parking garage to levels that officially didn't exist, opening onto a corridor of polished black marble lit by recessed lighting that felt like entering another realm entirely. At the end of the hallway was a door, heavy and soundproofed, that opened onto a space that stole her breath. An exclusive underground club that catered to the kind of people who operated outside normal society's rules. Low lighting in purples and blues, music pulsing like a seductive heartbeat, beautiful, dangerous people everywhere she looked. "This is part of our world," Jae-hyun said as they guided her through the space, hands possessive on her waist and back. "We wanted you to see it, to understand what you're now part of." They led her to a private booth with the best vantage point, able to see everything while being somewhat separate from the crowd. Eyes followed them, curious and envious. The Kim twins never brought anyone here. Until tonight. Until her. She sat between them as servers appeared with drinks she didn't order, and the attention she received made her understand that she'd just been marked as theirs in front of everyone who mattered in their world. "You're nervous," Jae-sung observed, his hand finding her knee under the table. "I can feel you shaking." "I'm fine," she managed, though it was obviously a lie. Jae-hyun leaned close, his lips nearly touching her ear. "You don't have to pretend with us, Zara. We know you're scared. We know this is overwhelming. But you're safe here. No one would dare touch what belongs to us." His hand covered Jae-sung's on her knee, both of them touching her, and the combined sensation made her breath catch. "We protect what's ours, absolutely, and without mercy." The evening unfolded like a fever dream. They introduced her to people whose names she recognized from news reports, criminals and corrupt politicians blurred together in expensive suits. She was presented not as their acquisition, but as their partner, their equal, and the shift in how people looked at her was immediate and profound. She went from invisible to untouchable in the span of hours. Jae-sung taught her how to read the room, pointing out power dynamics and hidden tensions with quiet commentary. Jae-hyun explained parts of their business in ways that made the illegal sound almost reasonable. And through everything, they touched her constantly, casually, staking claim in ways everyone could see. Hours later, they brought her back to the penthouse. All three of them buzzed on expensive champagne and adrenaline. The moment the door closed behind them, the atmosphere shifted into something heavier, more electric, inevitable. Zara stood in the center of the living room, heart racing, hyper-aware of every breath, every heartbeat. Jae-hyun loosened his collar, watching her with eyes gone dark. "Are you afraid right now?" he asked directly. She considered lying, but something about the intensity of the moment demanded honesty. "Terrified, but not for the reasons you probably think." "Tell us," Jae-sung requested, shrugging off his jacket. "What terrifies you about this?" The words spilled out before she could stop them. "That I'll like it too much. That you'll touch me, and I'll forget all the reasons I thought I should resist. That I'll lose myself in whatever this is between us, and never find my way back to who I was." Silence fell, thick and charged with energy that made the air feel electric. Then Jaehyun crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, his hands framing her face with surprising gentleness. "Then we'll make you a promise right now," he said, his voice intense. "We will never let you lose yourself. If you fall apart, we'll hold the pieces. That's what this is, Zara. We're not here to break you. We're here to show you who you really are." Jae-sung moved behind her, his hands finding her waist, anchoring her between them. "And if anything becomes too much, if you need us to stop or slow down, you say so. The contract gives us rights, but we're not monsters. Your comfort, your pleasure, your willing participation, those matter more than any legal document." His lips brushed her shoulder, barely a touch. "We want you wanting this as much as we do." "I think I already do," Zara whispered, the confession pulled from somewhere deep inside. "Want this. Want you both. It probably makes me crazy, but I can't stop thinking about what happens when those 100 days are over." Something shifted in their expressions, control slipping enough to show the raw hunger underneath. "Then let us show you," Jaehyun said, his thumb brushing her lower lip. "Not everything, not yet, but enough that you understand what you have to look forward to." What happened next existed in a space between propriety and promise, everything they could do without technically breaking their agreement. They led her to the couch, positioned her between them, and proceeded to unravel her with nothing but controlled touches and devastating words. Jaehyun kissed her for the first time, deep and consuming and absolutely claiming. His mouth moved against hers with expertise that spoke of experience she didn't have, teaching her without words how to respond, what he liked, how to match his intensity. When he finally pulled back, she was breathless and dizzy. Then Jae-sung turned her face toward him, his kiss different but equally overwhelming. Where Jaehyun had been demanding, Jae-sung was coaxing, drawing responses from her with patience that felt like seduction. His hand tangled in her hair, holding her exactly where he wanted while he explored her mouth thoroughly. By the time he released her, she was trembling. They took turns after that, one kissing her while the other's hands mapped her body through the silk dress, never crossing final lines but demolishing every other boundary she'd thought she had. "You taste like heaven," Jae-sung murmured against her neck, his teeth grazing sensitive skin in a way that made her gasp. "I could do this for hours, just learning what makes you react, what makes you melt." Jaehyun's hand splayed across her stomach, feeling her muscles jump under his touch. "We're going to learn every sensitive place, every spot that makes you gasp, every touch that makes you fall apart." His lips found the hollow behind her ear, kissing softly. "And we're going to take our time doing it." They kept their word about not crossing the final line, but they pushed every other boundary, touching and tasting and overwhelming her senses until she was dizzy with sensation. By the time they finally stopped, showing restraint that seemed to cost them physically, Zara was wrecked in the best way. They carried her to her room, tucked her into bed with gentle hands. But before they left, they each kissed her forehead with tenderness that contrasted sharply with what had just happened. "Sleep well," Jae-hyun said softly. "Dream of us. Because we'll definitely be dreaming of you," Jae-sung added with that dangerous smile. The days that followed were exquisite torture for all 3 of them. Now that boundaries had shifted, the twins felt no need to hide their desire or their intentions. They touched her more freely, always stopping before things went too far, building anticipation like stacking kindling for a fire they'd eventually light. Zara found herself looking forward to these moments, craving their attention in ways that should have alarmed her, but instead felt inevitable. She was falling for them, both of them, in ways that probably weren't healthy but felt more real than anything she'd experienced before. They showed her more of their world, taking her to business meetings where she sat silently and observed, to exclusive events where she wore designer dresses and diamonds and felt like someone else entirely. They taught her about their operations, explaining the family business with unexpected patience. She learned that while they operated outside the law, they had their own code, their own ethics that they never violated. They didn't hurt innocents. They didn't traffic in human misery. They moved money and goods for people who couldn't use traditional channels, and they did it with efficiency that had made them legends in their world. And slowly, Zara began to see them as actual people rather than just the dangerous men who'd bought her. She learned that Jae-hyun's control came from a childhood where emotions were weaponized, that his cold exterior protected a capacity for feeling that ran deeper than anyone suspected. She discovered that Jae-sung's warmth was real, but so was his capacity for violence, that he balanced both parts of himself with conscious effort. They let her see beneath their masks, showed her the scars that had shaped them, trusted her with truths they'd never shared with anyone outside each other. Day 70 arrived with an unexpected gift, a small jewelry box on her breakfast plate, both twins watching her with barely contained anticipation. Inside was a necklace, a delicate platinum chain with a pendant that incorporated both their initials intertwined with hers. Custom made, probably obscenely expensive, and absolutely perfect. "What's this for?" she asked, throat tight with emotion she didn't expect. "It's a promise," Jae-hyun said simply, "that you're ours and we're yours, in ways that matter more than any contract." "We're falling for you," Jae-sung added, his honesty devastating. "Probably fell for you the first time we saw you fighting so hard to save your family. But now we know you, the real you. And beautiful girl, you're extraordinary." Tears pricked Zara's eyes as she let them fasten the necklace around her throat. "I'm falling for you too," she confessed, the words terrifying and liberating. "Both of you. I don't know if that makes me strange or wrong or broken, but it's true. It makes you ours," they said together, and kissed her until she couldn't remember why she'd ever thought loving two people was supposed to be impossible. The final 30 days passed in a blur of growing intimacy and anticipation. The countdown was no longer something Zara dreaded, but something she anticipated with equal parts nervousness and excitement. They'd moved beyond just physical attraction into genuine emotional connection, spending hours talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds as thoroughly as they were learning each other's bodies. She'd started accompanying them to important meetings, her intelligence and outsider perspective offering insights that impressed even their most hardened associates. They valued her opinions, listened when she spoke, treated her like an actual partner rather than property. But underneath everything was the constant awareness of what was coming. Day 100, the night when everything would change irrevocably. They didn't let her forget it either, reminding her with heated looks and strategic touches, building the tension until it was almost unbearable. Soon, Jae-hyun would murmur against her skin during their increasingly heated make-out sessions. "Soon we'll show you everything. Are you ready for us?" Jae-sung would ask, his hand sliding up her thigh before stopping just short. "Ready to finally be ours completely?" Day 98 arrived with electric anticipation crackling through the penthouse. 48 hours left. 2 days until everything changed. Zara woke to find both twins sitting on her bed, watching her with expressions that mixed tenderness and hunger. "We need to tell you something," Jae-sung said, taking her hand as she sat up. "Something important before everything happens." Jae-hyun took her other hand, his grip warm and steady. "The contract's terms are clear about day 100, but we're giving you a choice we don't legally have to give you." "What choice?" Zara asked, suddenly nervous. "Walk away," Jae-sung said simply. "Right now, today, before anything happens. We'll honor every financial term. Your family stays protected and secure forever. But you go free. You go back to your life, finish university, find someone normal who won't share you the way we do." "Why would you offer that?" she asked, confused. "You have me legally. The contract doesn't mean anything if you don't want this," Jae-hyun interrupted. "We don't want you because some legal document says we can have you. We want you to choose this, choose us, stay because you want to, not because you're obligated." Zara looked between them. These two men who'd started as her captors and somehow become the people who understood her better than anyone. She thought about leaving, about walking away and going back to her ordinary life. The thought made her feel hollow, empty, wrong, because somewhere in the last 98 days, something fundamental had changed. This wasn't just obligation or even attraction anymore. It was connection, real and deep and transformative. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "Not because I have to stay, but because I choose to. Because you see the real me, all the parts one usually hide." Because when I imagine my future, you're both in it, and I can't imagine it any other way." The relief in their faces was profound, vulnerability showing through their controlled exteriors. "You're certain?" Jae-hyun needed to hear it again. "Completely certain," Zara confirmed. "I choose you. Both of you. Whatever that makes me, whoever that makes me become, I choose this." What happened next was the most genuine kiss she'd experienced yet. Jae-sung pulling her close with hands that trembled slightly. Jae-hyun joining them until all three were tangled together in an embrace that felt like coming home. Day 99 crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every moment felt charged, every look heavy with promise, every touch a preview of what was coming. The twins were different that day, more attentive, more tender, like they wanted her to remember every second. They made her favorite breakfast, held her hand during a walk through the penthouse gardens she hadn't known existed, kissed her goodbye before meetings like she was precious. That evening they took her to an exclusive restaurant with private rooms and impossible-to-get reservations, just the three of them with ocean views that looked like something from a fantasy. "We have plans," Jae-hyun said over dinner, his fingers intertwined with hers. "After tomorrow, we're taking you to Seoul. We want to show you where we came from, introduce you to our family, let you see that part of our world. And then Paris," Jae-sung added, his thumb stroking her wrist. "Because you mentioned it was your dream to see it, and we want to give you every dream you've ever had." "You're going to spoil me completely," Zara protested, though warmth bloomed in her chest at their thoughtfulness. "That's the entire point," Jae-hyun replied. "You're ours now, truly ours, which means your happiness becomes our responsibility and our joy." They returned to the penthouse as day 99 bled into day 100, midnight approaching with the weight of inevitability. Zara's heart raced as they led her to their bedroom, the room she'd never entered before. It was beautiful, all dark colors and luxury, with windows showcasing the city lights below. The massive bed dominated the space, and looking at it made everything suddenly very real. This was happening. Tonight. Now. "You will have both of us tonight," Jae-hyun said, echoing those words from so long ago, but now they sounded completely different. Not a threat, but a promise. A gift. "Both of us," Jae-sung confirmed, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Taking our time, making sure you feel everything, showing you what this can be between people who care about each other." "Are you ready?" Jae-hyun asked, turning her face toward him. "Because once we cross this final line, there's no going back. You'll be ours completely, and we'll be yours in ways that matter more than any contract ever could." "I'm ready," Zara whispered, meaning it with every part of herself. "I've been ready for longer than I wanted to admit. I'm yours. I choose to be yours." What happened next existed in a space of intimacy and connection that changed all three of them. They undressed her slowly, reverently, like unwrapping something precious. Every touch was deliberate. Every kiss was meaningful. Every whispered word was a promise. They took their time learning her body, paying attention to her responses, making sure her pleasure was always at the center of everything they did. There was initial nervousness that they soothed with patience, brief discomfort that they minimized with care, and then waves of sensation unlike anything she'd imagined. The mirrors in the room reflected everything, and watching the three of them together, seeing how they moved in perfect synchronization, was almost as overwhelming as the physical sensations. Jae-hyun's controlled intensity balanced Jae-sung's passionate warmth, creating harmony that surrounded her completely. They communicated without words, knowing instinctively when to push and when to pull back, when she needed gentleness and when she craved more. Hours blurred together in sensation and emotion, the physical intimacy deepening the connection that already existed between them until it felt unbreakable. At some point, tangled together in silk sheets with hearts racing and bodies exhausted, Zara whispered 3 words she hadn't planned. "I love you." She didn't specify which one, didn't need to, because somehow it encompassed both of them equally. "We love you too." They replied in perfect unison, their voices rough with emotion and exhaustion. "More than we thought possible. You've changed everything for us." They held her between them as sleep finally claimed all three, their arms creating a cage she had no desire to escape. Morning came with golden sunlight streaming through windows and the feeling of warmth on both sides. Zara woke slowly, processing everything that had changed in one night. She was no longer innocent, no longer just contractually bound, no longer uncertain about her place in their world. She was theirs completely, and the terrifying, beautiful truth was that she wanted to be. More than that, they were hers too. These dangerous men who'd shown her tenderness she never expected. "Good morning, beautiful," Jae-sung murmured, his lips brushing her shoulder. "How do you feel?" "Different," she admitted, turning to face them both. "Like I've been transformed into someone new. Someone who belongs here, with you. In this life we're building together." "You were always meant to be here," Jae-hyun said, his hand cupping her face. "We knew at the moment we first saw you. Finding you wasn't an accident. It was inevitability." The days that followed settled into a new rhythm, the same but fundamentally different now that all barriers had fallen. They were partners in every sense, equal and connected in ways that defied easy explanation. Zara continued her education, but now she was also learning their business, becoming an actual part of their operations. Her outsider perspective and sharp intelligence made her invaluable, and within months, people in their organization were coming to her directly for decisions and advice. She wasn't just the twins' wife anymore. She was a force in her own right. Her family thrived under their protection. Her grandmother had successful surgery and was healthy for the first time in years. Her siblings attended the best private schools and were flourishing academically and socially. They didn't know the full truth of how their fortunes had changed, just that Zara had married wealthy men who were incredibly generous. It was enough. They were safe and happy, which had been the entire point of everything she'd sacrificed. 6 months after that transformative night, Zara sat in on a high-level meeting with international partners, translating and negotiating with confidence that would have seemed impossible a year ago. She wore a tailored suit and the necklace with their intertwined initials, her natural hair in elegant braids that showcased the woman she'd become. When she presented a solution to a logistics problem that had stumped everyone else, the respect in the room was palpable. After the meeting, walking back through the penthouse between Jae-hyun and Jae-sung, she thought about the terrified girl she'd been when she signed that contract. "What are you thinking about?" Jae-sung asked, always attuned to her moods and thoughts. "How different everything is from what I expected," Zara admitted. "When I signed that contract, I thought I was selling myself to survive. I thought I'd spend my life as your possession, trapped and diminishing. And now," Jae-hyun prompted, "now I understand that sometimes the cages we fear walking into are actually doors to the freedom we never knew existed," she said slowly, working through the realization as she spoke. "You didn't trap me. You gave me space to become someone I never could have been on my own." "You gave yourself that space," Jae-hyun corrected gently. "We just provided the security and support. Everything you've become, that's all you, Zara. We're just lucky enough to witness it," Jae-sung added, pulling her close. "And to love you through every transformation." That evening, they sat together on the balcony overlooking Cape Town's glittering lights, a bottle of wine open between them. Zara leaned against Jae-sung's chest while Jae-hyun's hand rested on her knee, the three of them comfortable in silence that spoke of deep familiarity. "I need to tell you something," she said finally, breaking the quiet. "Something I've been thinking about for weeks." Both twins tensed slightly, attention focusing completely on her. "What is it?" Jae-hyun asked. "I want to finish my literature degree," Zara said. "I know I'm learning the business, and I love being part of what we're building together, but literature was always my passion. I want to complete what I started, maybe even teach someday." She rushed through the words, nervous about their response. "I'm not saying I want to leave or step back from our life, just that I want this other thing too." "Is that selfish?" The relief on their faces was immediate. "We thought you were going to say you were unhappy," Jae-sung admitted with a laugh. "Beautiful girl, of course you should finish your degree. You should pursue every dream you have. In fact, we've already been looking into it," Jae-hyun added. "We were waiting for you to bring it up, but we've made connections with the university. You can complete your coursework remotely, or attend in person with security if you prefer. Whatever makes you happiest." Zara twisted to look at them, tears pricking her eyes. You were already planning this? Even though I never said anything? We pay attention, Jae-hyun said simply. We see how you light up when you talk about books, about literature, about the analysis you love. Why would we want to take that away from you? We don't want you to lose yourself in our world, Jae-sung explained. We want you to bring your whole self into it. Every passion, every dream, every part of who you are. The conversation shifted to logistics, plans for how she'd balance her studies with her growing role in their organization. But underneath the practical discussion was something more profound. They were supporting her independence within their partnership, encouraging her to grow rather than constraining her. This was what healthy love looked like, even in the unconventional form they'd created. It wasn't about possession despite how it had started. It was about choosing each other every day while still remaining whole individuals. 3 months later, Zara stood in front of a lecture hall at the university, guest speaking about contemporary South African literature for one of her former professor's classes. She'd completed her degree with honors, her thesis on power dynamics in post-apartheid fiction earning praise that had nothing to do with her husband's influence. As she looked out at the students, some barely younger than herself, she saw curiosity and respect in their faces. They knew who she was married to. The rumors swirled constantly, but in this moment, she was just a brilliant young scholar sharing her passion. After the lecture, a young woman approached nervously. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Everyone says you're married to the Kim twins, that you're in some kind of unconventional arrangement. I don't mean to pry, but are you happy? Really happy?" Zara considered the question seriously, understanding the weight behind it. "I'm happy," she said honestly. "My life isn't conventional, and the path I took to get here wasn't traditional. But happiness isn't about following everyone else's rules. It's about finding the people who see you completely and love you anyway. I found that twice over. So yes, I'm really happy." The woman smiled, something like hope in her eyes. "Thank you for being honest. Sometimes I think we're all so worried about doing things the right way that we forget there are multiple ways to build a good life." Zara thought about that conversation all the way home, about how her story might look like a cautionary tale from the outside. Young girl trapped by contract with dangerous men, but had become something beautiful and real through choice and genuine connection. The narrative people told about her life and the truth of her experience were completely different things. That evening, she found Jae-hyun in his office, reviewing financial reports with his characteristic focus. She entered without knocking, comfortable enough now to interrupt his work. He looked up immediately, a smile transforming his usually serious expression. "How was the lecture?" he asked, already knowing because security had been present, because they always knew where she was and what she was doing. But there was no possessiveness in the question, just genuine interest. "It was good," she said, settling into his lap in a move that would have been unthinkable a year ago, but now felt natural. "One of the students asked if I was really happy with you," and Jae-sung. His body tensed slightly. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I'm happier than I ever imagined being. That you both see me, really see me, and love me for exactly who I am." She played with his collar absently. Was that the right answer? Jae-hyun's arms tightened around her. "There's no right answer except your honest one. The fact that your honest answer is that you're happy, that means everything to us." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "We worry sometimes, you know, that you'll wake up and realize you could have had a normal life, someone conventional and safe." "Safe is overrated," Zara said firmly. "And conventional sounds boring as hell. I'd rather have extraordinary and complicated with you too than simple and easy with anyone else." Jae-sung appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with obvious pleasure. "Are we having deep conversations without me?" he mock complained, crossing to pull up a chair close to them. "I was just telling Jae-hyun that I'd choose extraordinary and complicated over simple and easy any day," Zara repeated, reaching out to take Jae-sung's hand. "That I choose both of you every single day, and I'll keep choosing you for the rest of my life." "Good," Jae-sung said with that devastating smile. "Because we're not letting you go regardless. You're stuck with us forever." "Is that a threat or a promise?" she teased. "Both," they said in unison, making her laugh. These moments of lightness, of genuine joy, were what made everything worth it. Not the money or the security or the luxury, but this connection, this partnership, this love that existed between three people who shouldn't have worked, but somehow created something perfect. A year to the day after she'd signed that contract, they took her back to that same villa in Camps Bay where the wedding had occurred. But this time was different. This time her family was there, her grandmother healthy and glowing, her siblings grown taller and confident. This time there were friends, people from both worlds who'd become important to all three of them. And this time, there was a real ceremony, not a legal transaction, but a celebration of what they'd built together. Zara wore a dress she'd chosen herself, cream-colored silk that flowed like water. Both twins wore matching black suits, and when they stood before everyone important to them, renewing vows that had been forced the first time but were freely chosen now, there wasn't a dry eye watching. "I choose you," Zara said, her voice steady and sure. "I choose this life, this love, this partnership. Not because I have to, but because there's nothing else I want more. We choose you." Jaehyun and Jaesung responded together. "Every day, every moment, for the rest of our lives. You're ours, and we're yours, in every way that matters." The celebration lasted into the night, music and laughter filling spaces that had once held tension and fear. Watching her family interact comfortably with the twins, seeing her grandmother beam with joy, seeing her siblings admire the men who'd saved their family, Zara felt complete in a way she'd never expected. Later, back at the penthouse as the sun rose over Table Mountain, the three of them stood at the windows overlooking the city. "Do you ever regret it?" Jaesung asked quietly. "Signing that contract, agreeing to something so insane?" Zara considered the question, thinking about the terrified 19-year-old girl she'd been, desperate and drowning and seeing no other way out. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. That contract brought me to you, and you brought me to myself. The girl who signed that paper was surviving. The woman I am now is living. That's not something to regret. We love you," Jaehyun said simply, "more than we have words to express. You took a situation that should have been a tragedy and transformed it into something beautiful. That's all you, Zara. Your strength, your resilience, your capacity to choose love even when you had every reason not to." "I love you too," she replied, leaning back against them, secure in their combined embrace. "Both of you, equally, impossibly, completely." The months and years that followed brought challenges, as any life does. There were business complications they had to navigate together, family dynamics to manage, moments of jealousy or insecurity that required communication and compromise. But through everything, the foundation they'd built held strong. They'd learned to talk through difficulties, to never let resentment fester, to prioritize their partnership above everything else. Zara continued teaching, eventually becoming a professor in her own right, her unconventional personal life adding a layer of mystique that made students flock to her classes. She wrote papers on power and choice and agency that were informed by her own experience, though she never explicitly referenced her personal situation. She became known in academic circles as brilliant and uncompromising, someone who challenged conventional wisdom about relationships and happiness. Jaehyun and Jaesung's organization evolved too, becoming less focused on traditional criminal enterprise and more on legitimate business with morally gray edges. Zara's influence pushed them toward ventures that didn't harm innocence, that created value rather than just extracting it. They'd never be entirely legitimate. Their world would always operate outside normal rules, but they'd found a balance between who they were and who they wanted to become. 5 years after that initial contract signing, Zara sat in the same spot on the penthouse balcony where she'd spent so many evenings, but now there was a different piece of jewelry on her hand. A custom ring that incorporated elements from both twins, a physical symbol of their permanent commitment. She was writing a novel, loosely based on her own experiences but fictionalized enough to provide distance, exploring themes of choice and agency and love that defied categorization. "What are you working on?" Jaesung asked, emerging onto the balcony with coffee for both of them. "The ending," Zara replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "I'm trying to figure out how to end this story in a way that feels honest." "How does it end?" he asked, settling beside her. She smiled, looking out over the city that had become her home. It ends with the realization that some cages are actually sanctuaries. That sometimes the deal you make in desperation becomes the best decision of your life. That love doesn't have to look conventional to be real. That sounds like a happy ending, Jae-sung observed. It is, Zara confirmed. But not in the way anyone expected. It's happy because the protagonist chooses it, not because it was handed to her. Jae-hyun joined them, his presence completing their triangle as always. Are you writing about us? He asked with amusement. I'm writing about the idea of us, Zara clarified. About what it means to find belonging in unexpected places. About how the thing you think will destroy you can actually save you. Poetic, Jae-hyun said, pressing a kiss to her head. And accurate. You saved us as much as we saved you, maybe more. We saved each other, Zara corrected. That's what real partnership looks like. Not one person rescuing another, but people choosing to build something together that none of them could create alone. As the sun set over Cape Town, painting the sky in oranges and purples, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 6 words had started everything. You will have both of us tonight. Those words had terrified her then, representing everything she thought she was losing: control, innocence, freedom. But now she understood they'd represented something else entirely. An invitation into a life bigger and more beautiful than anything she'd imagined. A chance to discover who she really was beneath all the roles and expectations society had placed on her. The contract had brought them together, but choice had kept them together. Every day, all 3 of them chose this partnership, this love, this life they'd built from impossible circumstances. That choice, renewed constantly, was what made everything real and meaningful and worth every difficult moment. Zara wasn't the naive girl who'd signed a contract to save her family anymore. She was a woman who'd taken an impossible situation and transformed it into something extraordinary. She was a scholar, a partner, a force in her own right. She was exactly who she was meant to become. What are you thinking about? Jae-hyun asked, always attuned to her contemplative moods. How grateful I am, Zara said honestly. For all of it, even the hard parts. Because they led here, to this moment, to this life, to you both. We're the grateful ones, Jae-sung countered. You took a chance on something terrifying. You could have run, could have resisted, could have made all our lives miserable. Instead, you chose to see the possibility in an impossible situation. I chose love, Zara said simply. Even when it looked different than I expected, even when it scared me, even when I didn't understand it. I chose to trust that love was possible between us, and I was right. She looked at both of them. These men who'd started as her captors and become her partners, her lovers, her home. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Jae-hyun corrected with rare playfulness. The best decision was finishing that literature degree. Everything else just followed naturally. They laughed together, the sound carrying out over the city, full of joy and connection and the absolute certainty that they'd found something rare and precious and worth protecting at all costs. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real, complicated, sometimes messy, always intense, and absolutely true. It was proof that love doesn't have to look conventional to be genuine, that families can be built from choice rather than blood, that happy endings come in forms you never expected. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she'd do it all again. Sign that contract, take that terrifying leap, choose these 2 impossible men. Because sometimes the best things in life come from the choices that scare you most. 6 words had changed her world. You will have both of us tonight. But it was the choices she'd made every day after that had truly transformed her life. The choice to stay, to trust, to love, to build something extraordinary from impossible circumstances. That was the real story. Not how it began, but how they chose to continue it, day after day, creating something beautiful from what should have been a tragedy. And in the end, that choice, renewed every single day by all 3 of them, was what made this life not just bearable, but genuinely, impossibly, beautifully happy. The cage had become a sanctuary. The contract had become a promise. And 3 people who should never have worked together had become the perfect family, writing their own rules, defying every expectation, and proving that love, real love, can survive and thrive anywhere, even in the most unlikely circumstances. If you found yourself captivated by Zara's journey, if you understand that love doesn't always follow conventional paths, if you've ever wondered whether the things that scare us most might actually be exactly what we need, then this story resonated with you for a reason. Sometimes the most powerful transformations come from the choices we make when we're terrified. Sometimes the cages we fear walking into are actually doors to the freedom we never knew existed. And sometimes the people who seem most dangerous are actually the ones who see us most clearly. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts on unconventional love stories, on choosing happiness over convention, on the complexity of real relationships that don't fit neat categories. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to follow the rules, who build their own definitions of family and love, who prove that happy endings come in infinite varieties. Because this is what authentic love looks like sometimes. Not perfect, not simple, not what anyone else would understand, but real and true and absolutely worth every risk taken to find it. Until next time, remember that your story doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be beautiful. Your cage might actually be your chrysalis, and the transformation that terrifies you might be exactly what sets you free to become who you're truly meant to be.